Good evening, and welcome back to Appalachian Screams. Tonight, we're opening the door to Halloween's darkest side, when the candy runs cold and the knock at your door isn't a kid. These are 10 disturbing trick-or-treating horror stories, real tales of streets that loop forever, smiling masks that don't come off, and children who never made it home. So grab your flashlight, check your candy twice, and if you're brave enough, like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. You probably won't believe this, but the house that followed us didn't have legs. It had a dead lawn and a porch light the color of nicotine. I was just a chaperone, reflective vest, travel mug, tired smile, walking 4 kids around our loop in a town in Ohio where HOA rules are stricter than church. The air smelled like damp leaves and cheap fog juice, plastic gravestones, motion-activated witches, normal Halloween noise, rappers, laughter, that high squeal of costumes rubbing nylon against nylon. I'd done this a dozen Octobers. Our cul-de-sac is a circle, 7 houses. You can throw a baseball across it if you've got a decent arm. I know everyone by dog name. I know which porch steps flex and which railings splinter. I know which porch bulbs stay burned out because the owners think darkness makes the decor scarier, but really, it just makes me trip. We started clockwise. The kids were in a 4-piece chaos: blue dinosaur, astronaut, ghost made out of a sheet with marker eyes, and a very serious Wednesday Addams. I carried the spare flashlight and the emergency Kleenex. I was the grown-up, or close enough. House 1, full-size bars because Doug is going through a divorce and wants to be liked. House 2, raisins and pamphlets about sugar addiction, boo. House 3, the new couple with the inflatable 12-foot skeleton whose eyes seemed to follow you in a way that was probably just wind. Then we hit the 4th. I swear it wasn't on our loop. It was the kind of ranch that looks like it's been smoked in since Nixon. No decorations, just a ceramic bowl on a wobbling card table under that jaundiced porch light. The kids hesitated because the Take One sign, in cursive. The candy looked wrong, like fudge rolled in potting soil. But kids don't do texture analysis. They just grab. Say thank you, I prompted, because the porch light was on, which means someone's home, right? No one answered. Wind pushed dead maples together so they chattered like teeth. Somewhere a motion sensor cackled late. The smallest one, the ghost, unwrapped a piece. "Smells like dirt," he complained, then stuffed it in his mouth anyway. We laughed. I laughed. It felt normal enough to laugh at. But the sound died like it didn't want to travel. We moved on. Houses 5, 6, 7. The loop curved, and we came back toward our starting point. Already negotiating trades, 2 snack size for 1 full size, milk chocolate for dark. I glanced up, habit, parent radar, and saw the nicotine porch light 2 doors ahead of us again. Same dead lawn like a rubbed patch on a pool table, same card table, same ceramic bowl. Did we loop weird? I asked no one. We started clockwise, right? Wednesday scrunched her face. That house wasn't there last year. The astronaut shook his helmet. We're just going in circles. We live on a circle, I said, too cheerful, like cheerfulness could recalibrate geography. I told myself we'd passed the center island, and I'd misjudged our position. I told myself houses looked the same from certain angles. I told myself someone had their porch light set to the same color temperature. You'll say the same if you want to stay comfortable. Misperception. Coincidence. Fog. But when we stopped in front of it again, The bowl was refilled. The "Take One" sign had a new line in a different hand. "Please." I peered into the candy. Dirt candies again. They weren't dirt, obviously. They had a sheen like sugar or thin wax. I picked one up. It was cool and faintly moist, the way potatoes sweat when you rinse them. I sniffed. The smell wasn't dirt. It was like when you stand up too fast and the blood in your mouth tastes like pennies. The ghost kid reached. I pulled his hand back. "Maybe skip this house," I said. "We'll tell your parents later it was expired." "Can we say trick or treat first?" the dinosaur asked. He was the polite one. The bowl trembled like something beneath it shifted. Honestly, I thought raccoon. I pictured a raccoon under the skirt of the card table, pawing the metal legs. Practical, explainable, fixable. I knelt, lifted the tablecloth corner. There was no raccoon. There was nothing. Just an absence that poured cold air on my face. The porch boards hummed. Not like electricity, like throat singing. The sound vibrated my teeth. The astronaut grabbed my sleeve. "My app says we're at Doug's house," he said, showing me his phone. The map dot pulsed over the house we knew, a 2-story with mums and a Cubs flag. But the picture in front of us was the nicotine light, and that bowl and that tremor under the table that wasn't anything at all. "Guys," I said carefully, "we're going to cross the street." We crossed. The house crossed with us. Not literally, not on feet, but we took 3 cautious steps across asphalt, and when we turned to make a joke out of our fear, there it was on the opposite curb, like a reflection that had decided the mirror was optional. The porch light flickered, and the "please" sharpened into a 3rd line underneath in a thinner, shakier hand. "Take yours back." The ghost kid hiccuped. "What do we do?" I turned the candy in my hand, and my fingertips came away with a dark smear that smelled like pennies and grave water. The bowl rocked, and something inside the candies moved, like bubbles under skin. That was when I finally understood. We weren't just lost. We were being followed by a place that shouldn't move. I didn't drop the candy until it made a soft sound from my palm, like it had just swallowed. You'd think a house can't move. You'd think geometry protects you. But I watched it happen, and I can still hear the way the air bent around it, like sound going through thick glass. We ran, of course. The kids clutched their bags, plastic rustling like panicked wings. I counted heads every few seconds, my breath fogging in bursts. Doug's house, the real Doug's house, was right ahead, porch light steady, divorce pumpkins still smiling. I was halfway up the driveway before I realized the light wasn't illuminating the siding. It was just hanging there, haloed in the dark. The street behind us had gone silent. Not late-night suburb silent. This was recorded silence, the kind you get when an audio file cuts off before the background hum. I could hear my pulse, the fabric of my vest stretching when I moved, the whisper of leaves scudding across asphalt. No bugs, no TVs, no car doors, just us. The ghost kid whimpered. "Where are the other houses?" I looked back. The cul-de-sac had stretched out like a hallway. The homes I'd known since my 20s were smudges, melted into shadow. The only clear shape was the nicotine light, closer now, but facing us, like the house had rotated to watch. "Phones out," I ordered, trying to sound calm. 4 little rectangles lit up. No signal bars. Every screen showed the same text across the top. "Welcome back." I wanted to scream that this was impossible, but the words jammed in my throat. The kids were watching me for answers, and if I cracked, they'd follow. "We'll go to my house," I said. "Cut through the side yards." The yards weren't right either. Fences that should have been chain link had gone wooden, panels slick and damp. One gate opened on hinges that screamed like metal dragging teeth. The flashlight beam barely reached 10 feet before the light itself seemed to dissolve. We moved fast. At least I think we did. Distance didn't make sense anymore. The astronaut tripped and started crying under his helmet. I grabbed him up. His visor fogged over. But inside I saw his eyes weren't focusing. "It's too loud," he said. I stopped. There wasn't any sound. "It's in my helmet," he sobbed. "It's whispering numbers." I yanked it off. His hair was wet. Sweat, I hoped. But when I turned the helmet upside down, the earpiece was packed with dirt. Wet, black soil. I threw it, and it hit something soft that wasn't there. The air rippled, and a shape leaned forward like a curtain full of breath. We ran again, deeper into the warped neighborhood. Every direction led back to the same street. That house sat at every turn, its porch light steady, its card table waiting. The sign had grown a new line. "Bring them home." I snapped. I ran up the steps, every board creaking like ribs. "Who are you?" I shouted into the black doorway. "What do you want?" The smell hit first, like open graves after rain. Inside wasn't dark so much as thick. My flashlight refused to enter it. The kids huddled behind me, shivering. Something whispered from the doorway. Not a voice, not exactly. More like air pushed through teeth. "They took mine." The bowl quivered. A single candy rolled toward me, slow and deliberate. It stopped at the edge of the step, and the dirt coating pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Beneath it, I saw something pale. An eye, half-lidded, small as a child's marble. The ghost kid whimpered. "Can we go home?" I looked at him, and for the first time, I couldn't answer. His mask was slipping, and the sheet underneath was damp and brown around his mouth. "We are home," he whispered, voice lower, rougher. "We live here now." I stumbled back, dragging him with me. His feet didn't move. The fabric of his costume clung to the porch like it was being held. The porch boards flexed, softening under his shoes. I pulled harder, but when the sheet tore, there was no child beneath it, just that smell of wet iron and something like dirt breathing. The dinosaur screamed. I turned, and all 3 kids were facing the house, eyes unfocused, like sleepwalkers under bad light. "Don't look at it," I shouted, but it was too late. Their candy bags split, spilling the same dirt candies across the walkway. Each piece twitched. The house inhaled. The air rushed forward, yanking leaves, wrappers, my flashlight beam, all into its doorway. The porch light flared and popped, plunging us into thick black. I reached for the nearest kid's hand. I grabbed something small and cold. Not a hand, not alive. When the light came back on, there were 4 children again, but one of them was wearing my face. When the light flicked back, it wasn't the nicotine yellow porch bulb anymore. It was white and sterile, like a hospital hallway light dropped into someone's front yard. The world had gone colorless. Even the candy wrappers looked gray. 4 children stood in front of me. They were still in costume: dinosaur, astronaut, ghost, Wednesday. But the shapes inside didn't match what I remembered. Their proportions were wrong. Limbs too long, joints bending slightly backward, as if the kids had been redrawn from memory. The one wearing my face smiled, or tried to. My own features stretched across a head smaller than they should have been, skin too tight over cheeks. "You came back," it said. My voice. I staggered away. Where are the real kids? I shouted. Where did you— Home, the not me whispered. You brought them home. The house groaned behind it, and the front door yawned wider. Not open like a door should, wider, like the hinges were inside a throat. The air stank of pennies and mildew and something older, something like rot that had learned how to breathe. I backed into the street. Asphalt shifted under my shoes. I thought it was nerves until I realized it wasn't solid anymore. It had the texture of old carpet, soaked through with rain. Every step made a damp, sucking noise. I'm not part of this, I said, hands up. I'm just chaperoning. The ghost costume's head tilted. We always need one to lead. Behind them, the house's porch light pulsed, and the letters on the Take One sign rearranged themselves again. The kids read in unison, monotone, Leave one. Then they turned to me. The sound that came next wasn't wind. It was a collective inhale, the kind you hear before something screams or eats. The house exhaled, and the world bent inward. The cul-de-sac shrank, folding like paper. Every other home's windows flashed once, then went black. The night went heavy. I ran. It didn't matter which direction. The street looped, circled, spat me out in front of the same porch. I tried again, sprinting past the mailbox, through yards, across what should have been Doug's fence. But each turn brought me back to the bowl on the table. The candies inside were melting into black sludge, tiny mouths opening and closing in the mess. The fake kids followed slowly, no rush. They didn't need to run. I was trapped in their map now. I took nothing, I yelled at the porch. I didn't even eat it. The bowl trembled. Something inside lifted its slick, glistening head, small, grayish-white, smooth like river stone but pulsing with veins. Its voice was a dozen whispers overlapping. You took them. I looked down at my hands. Dirt streaks, thick as tar, crept across my skin. I rubbed at them, but they didn't smear. They sank in, crawling up my wrists. The streetlight above hummed louder until it burst, and the sound was almost relief. Through the dark, I felt movement under the road, shapes pushing up beneath the asphalt, the outline of roofs and porches pressing from below, as if more houses waited underneath, trying to surface. The children, or whatever wore them, closed in. You walked them home, Wednesday said softly. And now you have to stay until someone takes your place. Something cracked behind me. The road split, showing soil that glistened like fresh meat. The air turned wet and cold. I thought of the parents, the real ones, the texts waiting on my phone I'd never answer. I made a choice. Maybe it wasn't brave. Maybe it was the only way out. I grabbed the bowl, that slick thing inside still twitching, and stepped onto the porch. The boards were soft but solid enough to hold me. I turned back one last time. The fake kids stood at the curb, watching. The house seemed to breathe in, expectant. Take me, I said. Let them go. The doorway widened like a grin. The smell of dirt and copper filled my lungs. I stepped forward. The last thing I saw before the dark took me was my reflection in the window glass. Except it wasn't a reflection. It smiled first. A week later, my neighbor Doug told me they added a new house to the loop, a squat ranch with bad siding and a porch light the color of nicotine. The HOA can't find the permit. The county says the address doesn't exist. But every Halloween, there's a bowl on the porch that refills itself, and a sign that reads, Take one, please, leave one. And if you listen close enough, you can still hear someone inside whispering, Stay on the sidewalk, kids. None. Final story close.
You probably won't believe this, but I saw a mannequin blink on camera 3 different angles at once. I'm night security at a dead mall off the highway outside a city nobody vacations in. We keep the lights dim to save power. The air always smells like old carpet and nacho dust. On Halloween, we do a safe candy crawl. Tenants hand out fun-sized bars from decorated tables in front of their shuttered stores. It draws families who remember when this place was alive. I was posted at the security desk beside the fountain they turned off years ago. The coin-scummed water is gone, but the ring of calcium looks like a pale tide line. We have 12 cameras, most in black and white. I know each dead pixel like a birthmark. I wear a radio that squawks in bursts of boredom, keys that jingle too loud in the echoes, and a blister in the shape of a quarter on my heel. The event started like it always does. Kids in plastic masks, tired parents, the mall's one remaining pretzel place blasting cinnamon air. Maintenance put up corny signs pointing to Candy Alley. I did my rounds. Service corridor, loading dock, electrical closet that hums, even when it shouldn't. I checked a fire door that sticks and stamped the log. Normal. Then the mannequins began to drift. At first, I thought prank. There's a closed department store, lights off, plate glass catching the reflection of the carousel we no longer run. They left a few mannequins dressed in last season's clearance, a blazer, a peach dress, a child-sized hoodie. On camera 4, their silhouettes were static. On camera 6, same scene, different angle, but the group had shifted an inch toward the gate. I rolled back the feed. In the frames between, nobody entered. The metal security grill was down, padlocked. Still, the child mannequin had its head tilted just enough to notice. I walked that way to prove I was seeing glitch, not motion. The closer I got, the colder the air felt. You know that mall cold? Too much AC meeting too much emptiness? It was like that, but sharp, needle cold around my eyes. I shined my flashlight into the dark store. The beam washed over glass slick cheeks and the suggestion of smiles carved by someone who understood faces as an equation. I told my radio, 501 to 502, I've got movement in the old Finch and Fall. Static. Then, copy, probably kids. Negative. Grill is secured. I rattled it. The padlock clacked dull. Behind the mannequins, the black store interior felt thick, as if the clothes racks carried more than dust. My breath fogged like the AC had teeth. I backed off, convinced myself it was camera, lag, and lighting. That's all. The candy line passed by, a procession of glitter capes and squeaky wings. A little boy in a vampire cape stopped and stared at the mannequins like they were family portraits. His mom tugged him along. He didn't take his eyes off the sim until he rounded the corner. That's when the mannequins faced me. Not dramatically. One frame they stared past. The next, their chins pointed toward my throat. All at once, my radio hissed, "Fountain. Now." Different voice. Not my co-worker. Not anyone. I jogged back to the security desk. The fountain's dry bowl had become a stage. Tables ringed it, bowls piled high. And on the lip of the dry basin stood more mannequins than we owned, in outfits I recognized from stores that died here years ago. Teal mall walker sweats, prom dresses, a tux with dust like dandruff on its lapel. Some were wet. Their fabric hung heavy, darker, as if they had walked through rain that existed only for them. Parents chuckled. Creepy cute, someone said. The DJ near the food court played a clean version of Monster Mash. I checked the feed. Camera 9 showed the fountain circle empty. Camera 1 showed it crowded. I tapped the screens. My reflection looked gray and tired. On the floor, a candy bowl slid a centimeter without hands. Every piece inside made a soft tapping, like fingernails inside wrappers. The mannequins turned their painted faces toward the kids. Backpacks off the ledge, I told a group of teens. Barely listened. My jaw tasted metallic, like I'd bitten foil. On the nearest mannequin, the glass eyes weren't glass. They were glossy, wet, and they were looking at me. The fountain's dry drain gurgled once, then something inside it blew a wet bubble that whispered my name. If I'd walked out right then, I might have been fine, but I didn't. Curiosity is a bad habit for a night guard. I circled the fountain again, pretending to check the crowd. The mannequins hadn't moved, but they felt ready. Parents took selfies with them, laughing. Every flash made their eyes gleam too bright, like wet marbles instead of glass. The DJ's speaker cut mid-song. A hiss filled the mall, crawling from one end to the other, bouncing off tile and glass. Kids stopped mid-step. Then the PA system popped to life with an old jingle, our mall's 90s theme song, off-key, warbling, like it was being sung through a mouth that wasn't used to words. I looked back to my monitor wall. Every camera showed static, except one, the old Finch and Fall. The mannequins inside were gone. The gate still locked. I told my radio, 502, respond. We've got movement. Nothing. I started toward the store corridor, but the mall felt deeper. The fluorescent strips overhead buzzed irregularly, each light snapping on a half second after the last, chasing me forward in stuttering bursts. When I stopped, they stopped. When I moved, they followed. I reached the glass storefront. Empty. Not just mannequins. No shelves. No hangers. No floor. Black void, stretching back forever. I took one step closer, and my reflection stepped back. The flashlight beam entered the glass instead of bouncing off. My reflection turned and walked away without me. The radio crackled. Fountain. Same warped voice. Lower now, dragging each syllable. They're waiting for candy. I ran back. The crowd was frozen. Every person stood mid-motion. A dad holding a phone. A toddler half turned toward her mother. A teen reaching for a Kit Kat. Still, absolutely still. But not posed. Paused. Only the mannequins moved. They were in different places now, standing in line with the kids, heads cocked to the side like they were learning to mimic waiting. One of them, a woman in a red blouse, had a child's trick-or-treat bag clutched in her plastic fingers. The bag twitched. I thought maybe wind. Then I saw a hand inside it. Small, real, trembling. I took out my baton, though it felt ridiculous, like bringing a straw to a knife fight. Everyone, out! I shouted. No one blinked. The mannequins all turned their heads toward me in unison. The motion made a single soft pop, like joints snapping in rhythm. One of them, the child mannequin from the department store, stepped off the fountain rim. Its plastic feet hit tile and stuck, peeling away with a wet sound. The air shifted, smelled like fabric soaked in old perfume, and something sweet going sour. The PA hummed again. The same voice as before whispered through the static, "Don't stop the crawl." I looked down. Candy littered the ground, melting into streaks of red and brown, as if the wrappers bled color. My boots slid on it. The mannequin child opened its mouth, not hinged plastic anymore, but a dark slit, the edges wet. From inside, I heard breathing. I bolted for the security office, slammed the door, threw the bolt. The monitor cycled fast, every feed flashing mannequins, always closer. The camera in front of my office door showed a crowd of them pressed to the glass, faces tilted, watching. One of them lifted a hand and tapped. Tap, tap, tap. I muted the audio feed. I still heard it. Inside the walls. I realized the sound wasn't tapping glass. It was candy hitting tile, piece after piece, raining in soft thuds. The lights flickered again. When they came back, the crowd outside was gone. The candy stopped falling. Then the intercom cut on. Feedback sharp. My co-worker's voice came through. Flat, mechanical. "They like you. They said you can stay." The next camera feed showed me, standing by the fountain, smiling, surrounded by mannequins. While I was still locked inside the office, you know how it feels when your reflection moves a second late? That heartbeat of wrongness. Imagine that feeling stretching into hours. That's what it was like in the security office, watching myself on the monitor while I sat there, frozen, breathing too hard to be calm. The version of me on screen smiled, slow, unnatural. Around him, around it, stood mannequins in a perfect circle, like they were waiting for instructions. Each one held a candy bucket overflowing with things that weren't candy. I saw glints, keys, teeth, bracelets, things left behind. I thought, this is it. This is the end. But fear does something strange. It turns logic off and courage on, like flipping the same switch backward. I grabbed the emergency flashlight and the bolt cutters. The power flickered, monitors went dark, but I could still hear movement in the halls, the soft shuffle of plastic feet, the slide of limbs too smooth to be flesh. When I opened the door, the mall was pitch black except for the glow from the fountain area. My other self, that thing, stood at the edge, motionless now. Mannequins ringed it, shoulder to shoulder, heads tilted toward the dark basin. Inside the fountain, the drain bubbled again. Not water this time, something thicker. It whispered, that same voice from the pipe. "Keep the lights on. They feed on the dark." I realized the dark victory wasn't meant to be ironic. It was instruction. If I could kill the power, maybe I could stop them from feeding. Maybe. So I ran. Service hallway, breaker panel, flashlight jittering against walls stained with mildew. The hum under the concrete was alive now, like the mall had veins. I tripped on something, fell hard. The flashlight beam rolled away and stopped on a mannequin face lying on the floor, eyes rolled back to white plastic. It smiled, cracked jaw stretching wide, whispering in my own voice. They don't like liars. I kicked it down the hall and kept moving. At the breaker room, all the switches were flipped up. Everyone, humming faintly. Behind me, I heard the mannequin's feet scraping tile, slow and steady. I grabbed the main lever, counted to 3, and yanked it down. The hum stopped. The air dropped 10 degrees. For one clean second, silence. Then, from the fountain, an explosion of screams. Hundreds, layered, cut off just as suddenly. The mall went completely dark. I stumbled back toward the atrium, flashlight shaking in my hand. The mannequins were gone. The version of me in the fountain, gone too. The only sound left was water trickling somewhere deep below. The fountain, long dry, was full again. Clear water rising to the brim, candy floating on top. The PA crackled once more, weak, almost kind. Good shift, officer. I don't remember leaving, but I found myself outside, dawn bleeding into the parking lot. My radio was dead. My phone battery at 1%. The mall behind me looked normal. Dark windows, for lease signs. The same empty asphalt sea. The event was canceled that year. The property company fenced the whole place off and filed for demolition, but they never could start it. Every contractor quit after night 1. They said their equipment turned itself on. They said the mannequins were different each morning. It's been 3 Halloweens since then. I drive past sometimes. The fences are still there, and every year, the fountain area glows just a little before midnight. Soft, white light like camera glare. The rumor shiz that someone new took the job. Young guy, first night shift. They told him to keep the lights on. I never told him what happens when you don't. You ever pick up a fare that felt wrong the second they got in? I have. Halloween night, 2 years back. I was driving rideshare outside Denver, trying to clear rent before midnight. The streets were orange and slick from rain. Every cul-de-sac crowded with trick-or-treaters. I'd already hauled one drunk witch, 2 skeletons, and a kid who puked caramel onto my back seat. Standard holiday chaos. Then I got the ping. Pickup. Pumpkin Street. 11:42 p.m. Surge price. Double rate. I almost declined because there's no Pumpkin Street in my zone, but the app showed a clean route. A neat grid neighborhood a few miles west. Looked new. My GPS said it was recently mapped. That should have been the first red flag. The rain thickened as I pulled off the highway. The neighborhoods here all blur together. Cookie-cutter houses, trimmed hedges, porch lights flickering through fake cobwebs. But this one was quieter. Too quiet. No laughter, no barking dogs. The air had that heavy electrical stillness that comes before a storm. My passengers were 3 teenagers, maybe 17, all makeup and plastic fangs, glitter and nerves. One sat up front, freckles, smelling like cinnamon gum. The 2 in back were a couple, both dressed as vampires. Red contact lenses, glowing every time headlights passed. Pumpkin Street? I asked. Yeah, said the girl in back. The one with the good candy. I laughed. Every street thinks that, but none of them laughed with me. They whispered to each other as I drove, like they were rehearsing something. The GPS glitched, rerouting every few blocks, but it kept me on course. until the blue arrow began to spin. The voice prompt stuttered, "Turn left on, left on, left on," then cut out. The road signs had changed. The reflective green names were new, but the paint bled from the edges, letters sagging as if the metal itself had melted. Pumpkin Street appeared suddenly between two empty lots. No traffic, no porch lights. "Here?" I asked. "Yeah," the boy said. "Just go to the end." I rolled slow. The houses looked half-built. Frames of siding, no numbers, no mailboxes. A few jack-o'-lanterns burned on porches. Their faces wrong. Too realistic. Eyes deep set, like they'd been carved from flesh instead of pumpkins. I wanted to turn around, but my app pinged "Arrived," even though we weren't near a house. "Wait here," the girl said, already unbuckling. "Timer's running," I joked, but my voice came out tight. They stepped out, leaving the back door open. The dome light caught them walking toward a dark yard, shadows swallowing their feet. I watched the timer tick. 1 minute, 2. Then I noticed the candy on the curb. Not in bowls, just scattered. Hundreds of wrapped pieces, glistening in the rain, like they'd just been poured from a bag. Each wrapper said the same thing. Pumpkin Street Treats. Cheap branding. But none of the logos matched any candy I knew. I rolled down the window. "You guys good?" No answer. Only the rain, and a sound like chewing somewhere in the dark. Then the app buzzed again. A new ride. Same pickup address. Pumpkin Street. Same 3 profile photos. I stared at it until the ping stopped. Then another came in. Same again. Over and over. My queue filling with the same request. My phone buzzed until the battery hit red. I should have driven off. I didn't. I got out, flashlight in hand, and followed their footprints through the mud. They led between 2 half-finished houses into a narrow alley lined with jack-o'-lanterns. Each one had a flickering candle, but the flames were blue, not orange. The air smelled sweet, like burned sugar and rot. Something crunched under my shoe. I looked down. Candy. But when I bent to pick it up, the wrapper split open on its own. Inside wasn't chocolate. It was a human molar. I dropped it, backed away. That's when I heard their voices again, from deeper down the alley, echoing wetly. "Hey, driver, want some candy too?" The jack-o'-lanterns all turned toward me at once, their smiles widening as something inside them began to breathe. I did what any rational person would do. I bolted. The flashlight swung wild in my hand, beams slicing through rain and mist. Every house looked identical, half-finished, siding warped and peeling, plastic orange buckets overturned on every porch. Behind me, something shuffled and scraped, the rhythm off, like steps that couldn't quite remember how to walk. I reached my car and slammed the door. The moment I hit drive, the GPS screen blinked, recalculating route, over and over. No signal bars, no exit road, just a looping map of Pumpkin Street, stretching into itself like a snake, eating its tail. My phone buzzed. A text notification. Pumpkin Street, rideshare. "We appreciate your service. Please remain parked while your passengers complete their pickup." I froze. The sender wasn't the app I used. Wrong font, wrong logo. Then I saw movement in the rear view. 3 figures, walking side by side down the middle of the street. They weren't hurrying, just drifting toward me. The flashlight beam hit their faces for a split second, and I saw my own car's logo mirrored perfectly in their eyes, like they were reflecting not the light, but me. I jammed the accelerator. The tires spun, squealing against wet asphalt. But I wasn't moving. The road felt soft, like my wheels were sinking into it. My dashboard blinked. Traction error. I tried reverse. Same thing. The trio stopped about 20 feet behind me. The girl from before raised her hand, something dark dripping from her fingers. She smiled, and her teeth gleamed too bright, like candy coating. "You're supposed to wait," she said, voice flat, unhurried. My headlights flickered. The world dimmed, every house going completely dark, except for the pumpkins. Hundreds of jack-o'-lanterns now, crowding lawns, glowing blue. Their carved faces changed each time my lights flashed, smiling, frowning, gaping wider. I hit the horn. No sound. Then the back seat creaked. I spun around. Nothing visible, but the smell. Sweet rot, like syrup poured over a corpse, filled the air vents. My breath fogged the glass even though the heater was off. The girl's voice came again, this time inside the car. "You didn't eat. You have to eat before you leave." I turned off the engine, heart pounding. "Look," I said, voice shaking. "I'll take you wherever you want. Just, just get in." The passenger door opened on its own. Rain blew in. For a moment, I saw them clearly. Skin slicked like wet wax, makeup running, eyes hollow, but shining from the inside. The couple slid into the back seat. The girl climbed up front. None of them buckled. None of them blinked. "Destination?" I croaked. "Same place," she said. "Always the same place." The GPS reactivated. The map spun, and the route drew a perfect circle, back to Pumpkin Street. As I drove, the air inside thickened. The rain outside slowed, each drop hanging longer in the air before falling. The road signs repeated, the same houses passing again and again. And each time we looped, the passengers looked a little less human. Their eyes sank deeper, their mouths stretched wider. At some point, the girl started humming, a tune that made my stomach clench. I realized it was the same melody the GPS voice used for recalculating. Then, my dashboard lit up red. Low fuel, battery overload, passenger door open. I turned. The back seat was empty. The girl in the front smiled, and in her lap sat my phone, screen glowing bright with the rideshare app. My profile photo stared back at me. But it wasn't my picture anymore. It was hers. The rain stopped. Outside, Pumpkin Street stretched ahead forever, lined with blue-lit pumpkins as far as I could see. The app chimed cheerfully. "Next passenger found. Driver, your name is Laura. Estimated arrival, 11:42 p.m. I swear the app said my name. Laura. My name isn't Laura. But the voices was smooth and cheerful, like an AI trying to sound human. The screen blinked again, showing my new driver profile. 5 stars. Hundreds of rides completed. Everyone to Pumpkin Street. My chest went cold. "I'm done," I said out loud. "You hear me? I'm not doing another run." The girl in the passenger seat smiled wider. Her cheeks cracked, faint lines splitting the makeup. "But you already did," she whispered. "You picked us up." The car hummed even though I'd turned the ignition off. Headlights flared, illuminating the endless cul-de-sac. Every jack-o'-lantern on every porch flickered to life at once. Dozens, then hundreds, blew fire licking from their carved mouths. Between them stood shapes that weren't quite people. Some leaned too far forward, others too tall for their proportions. Their eyes glowed orange, reflections of those flames. I tried to open my door, but it wouldn't budge. Seatbelt locked. Dashboard warning lights blinked in rhythm with my heartbeat. The girl beside me leaned close, breath sweet and rotten. You'll get used to it. The others did. I stared at her. What others? The ones who drove before you, she said softly. You brought them back. We always come back. The car jolted forward, engine roaring even without my foot on the gas. The steering wheel turned itself, following the road as it curved into tighter and tighter circles. The world outside blurred, houses twisting into the same shape, pumpkins smearing into a ring of blue light. The air thickened. My reflection appeared in the windshield, but it wasn't copying me. It smiled when I didn't. Its mouth opened slowly, teeth shining like polished kernels of candy corn. Stop, I whispered. Stop it! The reflection kept grinning. Then, without warning, the headlights cut out. Total darkness. My breath hitched. I could still feel the car moving, but there was no sound, no rain, no tires. Just the soft crunch of candy wrappers under the wheels. Something brushed my shoulder. The girl's voice came from everywhere now, layered with the others. The couple from the back seat, overlapping. End of trip. Rate your experience, I screamed, clawing at the buckle until it finally snapped. The moment it did, the car stopped. The air went still. I opened the door, half falling out onto cold asphalt. Pumpkin Street was gone. The road stretched straight into a fogged horizon, empty and gray. I turned back. My car idled quietly, headlights on again. But no one was inside. Just a faint glow from the rideshare screen. I reached in to grab my phone, but the app had already logged another ride. Passenger, unknown. Pickup, Pumpkin Street, 11:42 p.m. I deleted the app that night. I even smashed the phone, but it didn't help. Every Halloween since, I get a text from an unlisted number at the same time. Your passenger is waiting, don't be late. I tried moving states, even changed cars. But last week, my new GPS flashed on by itself. The map rerouted me. Back to Denver. Back to Pumpkin Street. I don't drive nights anymore. Not officially, but every time I pass a jack-o'-lantern, I swear the reflection in its eyes looks familiar, like it's waiting for me to remember the way.
You probably won't believe this, but I was the one who built the route that shouldn't exist. I'm the local historian for our little town in western Pennsylvania, the kind of place that survives on antique shops, cider festivals, and legends too dull to scare anyone after middle school. Every Halloween, the museum organizes a haunted history walk. I narrate, wave my lantern, and tell stories about influenza graves and vanished rail lines. It's usually cute, educational, and harmless. This year, I decided to update the map, make it authentic. I went through old property ledgers in the archives, ink-faded plats from the 1880s, names like Bartlett and Cleaver stamped across yellow paper. One street caught my eye, Hollow Bend. It ran parallel to Main Street for 3 blocks, then dead-ended near the river. The odd part? It doesn't exist now. Not on GPS, not on county records. Vanished. I thought it'd make a perfect stop. Ghost Street, lost to time. I even joked about it to my intern, Maya. "We'll fake a detour there," I said. "Spice up the walk." Halloween night came clear and cold. I wore my old trench coat, the one that makes me look more scholar than tour guide, and carried the same brass lantern I use every year. 23 guests showed up. Families, college kids, one old man with a camera around his neck who never spoke. We started from the courthouse square, me reciting practiced history about the first mill, the cholera pits, the 1912 fire. Laughter. Flashlights bobbing. The trouble began halfway through. According to my printed route, we were supposed to cross Maple, turn onto Birch, and circle back. But the sidewalk ahead curved left unexpectedly. The street sign read Hollow Bend. I laughed out loud. "Someone's having fun with us," I said. Nobody answered. The crowd shuffled uncertainly, faces dim in the lantern light. A cold gust slid between us, smelling like wet leaves and something metallic. I checked my phone's map. It showed nothing, just a gray square where the street should be. I looked up again, and the houses were off. Narrow, too tall, painted in shades that didn't belong to any modern palette. Bone white, dull rust, midnight blue that swallowed light. The windows reflected our group like mirrors, but the reflections lagged a second behind. "Let's, keep going," I said, voice cracking. "Probably a movie set or something." Maya whispered, "We didn't register any permit for a set." The road sloped downward. Asphalt became brick, the pattern uneven. The sound of our footsteps turned hollow, almost metallic. We passed a porch with jack-o'-lanterns carved too deep, their candles burning green. One toppled as we walked by, spilling melted wax that hissed against the cold bricks. At the next house, a woman in an old-fashioned bonnet stood in the doorway, motionless. Her dress was gray, layered, 19th century. "Happy Halloween!" I called, trying to stay cheerful. She didn't move. Her eyes were wide and glassy, and I realized with a shock she wasn't standing. She was hanging. Her toes hovered an inch above the floorboards. Someone screamed. The lantern shook in my hand. But when I blinked, she was gone, and the doorway was empty. Maya grabbed my sleeve. "Mr. Harlan?" she whispered. "Your lantern, look." The brass was glowing faintly from within, not the candle inside it, but the metal itself. Etched words had appeared around the rim. "You found it." I dropped it, and the flame didn't go out. It flared green like the pumpkin's candles. The bricks beneath our feet shifted, new mortar lines appearing like veins under skin. I counted the guests. 23. Then again, 24. One of them was the woman from the doorway, now walking quietly among us, eyes reflecting the lantern's green fire. When I tried to check the roster later, her name was already printed there, written in my handwriting. I didn't add that name. I swear on every artifact in that museum I didn't. Her name, Clara Bartlett, was printed in careful cursive on my roster sheet, right between Maya Levins and Tom Deacon. I knew those two. I didn't know her. We were standing in the middle of Hollow Bend, the street no one remembered. My lantern's flame still burned green, flickering brighter whenever I spoke. The guests had gone quiet. They looked uneasy but polite, assuming this was part of the act. Tour guides sometimes stage surprises, But Maya caught my arm and hissed, "None of this is on your route, right?" "No," I whispered. "It's not even on a map." I checked the time. 9:16 p.m. The walk was supposed to end by 9:30 at the cemetery overlook. We were already off schedule. "All right," I said, forcing cheer. "Let's head back toward Maple." We turned around. The curve of Hollow Bend had stretched longer, and the courthouse lights were gone. The air smelled thicker, burnt sugar and copper. The houses had changed again. Shutters closed, curtains drawn. Candles flickered behind some windows, silhouettes twitching against the glow. The group murmured nervously. A man laughed too loudly. "Cool effects," he said. "How are you doing this?" I didn't answer. As we walked, I noticed something new. Plaques on each house, the kind you see on historic homes. Bronze with engraved names and dates. Bartlett Home, Assessment, 1889. Cleaver Residence, 1891. Names I recognized from the archive documents. Every one of them matched the vanished street ledger. Clara, the woman who wasn't supposed to be there, walked near the front, her gray dress whispering against the bricks. She didn't speak or turn, but the others gave her space instinctively. Her candle lantern glowed faintly under her chin, and I noticed it wasn't made of glass. It was bone, carved thin like parchment. Maya muttered, "She's wearing real period clothing." "Yeah," I said, "too real." A cold drizzle began. It made the bricks shimmer, but the raindrops didn't hit Clara. They parted around her like she was behind invisible glass. We passed another plaque, Harlan House, 1892. I stopped breathing. My last name. I had never seen that record in the archives. I leaned in, trying to read the fine print beneath the title. The letters were worn, but I could make out. Site of the Hollow Bend Fire, 1893. All 24 residents perished. 24. We had 24 people on the tour now. Maya touched my shoulder. "Let's get out of here," she said. "Now." I nodded and turned back to the group. "Everyone stay together," I called. "We're taking a shortcut back." The shortcut was guesswork. Every turn led to another row of dark houses. The cobblestones rippled subtly, like waves underfoot. People began to panic. The older man with the camera started snapping photos, flash bursting white in the fog. After 3 shots, the 4th didn't flash. His camera melted in his hands. Not burned. Melted, like wax. The sound came next, a low hum rising from under the street. It grew into a vibration that made the windows tremble. The green flame in my lantern pulsed faster, syncing with the hum like a heartbeat. The smell of smoke crawled through the air. Old smoke, oily, chemical. Then Clara turned around. Her face looked peaceful, like a photograph, until her mouth opened. It wasn't a scream. It was the sound of the hum made flesh. A deep, droning exhale that shook the street lamps. Her eyes reflected firelight that wasn't there. "History repeats," she said calmly. "You told the story. You wrote us back." I stumbled backward. My foot sank through a crack between bricks, and the surface gave way like soft earth. A burst of heat rose up, and I heard faint cries from below. The street wasn't brick anymore. It was layered ash. Maya grabbed me, pulled me upright. "You're burning the map," she yelled. I looked at my hand. The paper route in my pocket was smoldering, lines and names fading. But Hollow Bend stayed bold, etched deep into the parchment, like it refused to die. Then the paper folded itself in half, and a new line appeared in fresh ink. "Next year's guide, Maya Levins. When a historian runs out of facts, all that's left is belief, and I stopped believing in coincidences halfway down Hollow Bend. The bricks glowed faintly beneath our shoes. Every breath smoked in the chill, even Clara's, though hers drifted upward, drawn toward the sky like reversed snowfall. The guests clustered close. I counted them again. 24, including me. I couldn't see Maya anymore. The green fire in my lantern sputtered, pulsing in rhythm with that humming under the street. The sound grew clearer, resolving into words whispered through smoke. Tell them the end, Harlan. Finish the story. I realized something awful. The legend I always told on the tour, the one about a fire that wiped out a forgotten street in 1893, wasn't just folklore. I'd pieced it together from half-burned records, invented dialogue, and guesses. A filler tale. But I had said it so many times that maybe the town started to remember it as truth. And tonight, my own voice had called it back. We passed the Bartlett house again. Its shutters were open now. Firelight licked inside. Behind the glass, shadows reenacted scenes I'd described to tourists for years. Families trapped behind locked doors, their lanterns melting. It wasn't memory, it was playback. Clara stood in the center of the street, facing me. Her voice was calm, reverent. You gave us words again. Words make roots. I wanted to argue, to claim I didn't know, but smoke seeped through the seams of my coat, curling like fingers. The guests started coughing, eyes watering. One by one they dissolved into gray silhouettes, their outlines crumbling like old photographs left in sun. Only Maya stayed solid. She held my burned map, edges glowing red. You can fix it, she said. Erase the story. How? Stop telling it. The humming deepened into a roar. The houses burned silently. No flames, just light. Clara lifted her lantern. The green fire inside swelled until it matched mine. Our two lights connected, a bridge of color between centuries. I stepped toward her. The heat pressed against my chest like a heartbeat outside my body. What happens if I do? I asked. She smiled, sad, grateful. Then we go quiet again. I dropped my lantern. The glass shattered, spilling green fire onto the bricks. It spread fast, devouring street, houses, sky. The roar cut off mid-breath. For a moment, everything was pure white. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on Main Street. The group around me clapped politely. The courthouse lights were back. My watch read 9:29 p.m. Great finale, someone said. Very immersive. Maya blinked at me, dazed. The map in her hands was blank. No streets, no names. I exhaled, shaky relief mixing with disbelief. Maybe it was just hysteria, a shared illusion born from fog and suggestion. But later, when I filed the attendance sheet, I saw her name again. Clara Bartlett, written faintly in old ink. And at the bottom, a new line in fresh handwriting I didn't recognize. Next year's guide, Henry Harlan, retired. I turned off the museum lights and walked out, telling myself I'd never do the tour again. Yet when I passed the alley behind the courthouse, I saw the street sign leaning against the wall, streaked with soot. Hollow Bend. It shouldn't exist, but it does. Waiting. You probably won't believe this, but I deliver candy for a living. Not in a fun way. No costumes, No kids. I drive for a third-party logistics company that ships seasonal overflow when stores run out. Think of me as the guy who refills Halloween shelves after you already cleared them out. It was October 31st, 10:37 p.m. when dispatch called. Need you to drop emergency tubs on Cedar Crescent. Local outage. They still got trick-or-treaters. I almost refused. Cedar Crescent's not on any map newer than 2005. It's an old neighborhood outside the city, half condemned, mostly dark even on good nights. But it was triple pay for a one-stop drop. Candy tubs, no signatures, easy money. I loaded the van. 3 30-pound totes of assorted mix. Reese's, M&Ms, and those chalky orange things nobody eats. My scanner beeped once as I clocked out, and I hit the highway. The air smelled like rain and static, and the closer I got, the fewer lights I saw. By the time I turned off the main road, the GPS had frozen. My route line turned gray, signal flatlined. Only my headlights kept me company, carving pale tunnels through fog that felt too heavy to be weather. I found Cedar Crescent by luck. The sign leaned at an angle. Letters half-flaked. Our car. Sent. Houses crouched behind trees like animals waiting for headlights to pass. Every window was black. No streetlights. No porch lights. No sound. I parked at the first house with a porch I could see and cut the engine. Silence slammed down, deep enough that my ears rang. I grabbed the first tub and hauled it to the steps. A note was taped to the door. Leave candy on porch. Kids will come. That should have been fun. But there were no kids, no movement, no cars. I waited a minute, then two, listening. The air was too still, no wind, no bugs, just my heartbeat in my ears. I set the tub down and turned to leave, then stopped. There were fresh footprints on the walkway, small, shoe-sized, leading away from the porch into the middle of the street. Not toward a house, just out. I followed them halfway down the block before they vanished into the asphalt, as if the street had swallowed them. When I got back to the van, the driver's door was open. I know I closed it. My scanner sat on the seat, screen glowing. It read, "Signature required. Resident, Candyman." I laughed nervously. Okay, someone's screwing with me. The moment I said it, I heard a rustle behind the van. Not a person. Too soft, too scattered, like many small things moving together. I swung my flashlight around. The beam caught shapes, tiny hands, masks. They darted out of sight before I could focus. My radio crackled. Dispatch shouldn't have been on this channel. But a voice came through, wet and whispering, "Don't leave until they eat." I dropped the radio. When I looked up, every porch light on the block flickered on at once. Except they weren't electric. Each glow was orange and dim, like from inside carved pumpkins. The houses didn't look abandoned anymore. Curtains twitched. Doors opened a few inches, just enough for candlelight to leak through. And then the trick-or-treaters came. Dozens of them, all at once from the end of the street. No parents, no voices, no flashlights. Just kids in melted masks, plastic candy buckets dragging along the asphalt. Their footsteps didn't make sound. I backed toward the van, heart hammering. They stopped a few feet away. One lifted an empty bucket and spoke through a cracked mask. The voice was faint, metallic. "Delivery?" I nodded. Couldn't speak. They all smiled, if you could call it that, and took one synchronized step closer. That's when I noticed the tub I'd left on the porch was already empty, wrappers blowing across the street like dead leaves, and the wrappers had my name printed on them. I should have run then, but I've learned that when something feels wrong on a delivery, the body freezes before the mind catches up. The kids, or what looked like kids, stood perfectly still under the dim pumpkin glow. Their masks sagged in the damp, features melting into waxy streaks. None of them breathed loud enough for the cold air to fog. I lifted the second tub from the van, just to keep my hands busy. "Here," I said, forcing a laugh. "Free candy." My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. They didn't move. Then one tiny hand reached out. Its fingers were gray, the skin powder dry, nails too dark. The child took a piece, unwrapped it, and popped it under the mask. A faint crunch followed. The others joined in, hundreds of wrappers crackling at once. Too fast, too hungry. The sound stopped. Every head turned toward me again. I stumbled back into the van and slammed the door. The headlights cut through the fog, barely. The shapes were closer now, circling. I hit the lock button. The van responded with a mechanical click, then a second click as every door unlocked again on its own. The radio hissed. "Don't leave until they finish," the whisper said. "They don't like waste." I yanked the cord from the outlet, and the radio went silent. But my phone lit up immediately. A new notification. "Delivery complete. 0 of 3 signed. Recipient pending." The screen stuttered, scrolling on its own, and a line of text appeared beneath the address. "Step out for verification." Outside, the kids had begun to hum. The tune wasn't childish. It was deep, harmonic, old. The air thickened, the fog pulsing in time. My headlights flickered. When they came back on, the street looked longer. Another row of houses had appeared, perfect copies of the first. Each porch held a candy tub, all empty. Wrappers drifted down like snow. I opened the glove box and grabbed the flashlight. As soon as the beam hit the street, every child froze mid-step. Dozens of heads turned toward the light, and the humming stopped. "Stay back," I whispered. "I'll leave the last tub and go." I dragged it to the curb, set it down, and backed away. The nearest mask bent down. The candy inside was already unwrapped. A wet hand reached in and came up holding a piece that glistened red. They passed it from one to the next. Each bite made a small sound, like paper tearing underwater. The smell of copper rolled through the air. I couldn't take it anymore. I jumped into the driver's seat, turned the key. The engine groaned but wouldn't catch. Battery light on. Fuel gauge blinking empty, though it had been full an hour ago. Outside, the children were lining up beside the van. Their masks hung loose now, revealing faces that weren't faces. Smooth skin with hollow eye dents, mouths painted on. Each carried a candy bucket overflowing with something dark that dripped between their fingers. A knock on the window. Soft, repeated. I turned. A small girl stared in. Her mask was half melted, eyes wide, black liquid streaming down her cheeks. She held out a single wrapped sweet, pressed it against the glass. The wrapper was printed with my delivery barcode. "Yours," she mouthed. The van's engine roared to life on its own. Headlights surged, too bright, flooding the street in harsh white. The kids screamed, or maybe the sound was metal grinding. The light flickered once, twice, then every bulb in the neighborhood exploded. Darkness. Complete. Something moved in that dark, brushing against the van doors, dragging along the panels dozens of tiny nails scratching metal. Then a voice whispering through the open radio line, "Still one tub left." I looked to the back seat and saw the final candy container there, sealed tight, breathing. That tub shouldn't have been there. I'd left all three outside, one on the porch, one in the street, and the third I never even opened. But it sat in the back seat now, lid trembling slightly with the sound of something breathing underneath. The air smelled like burnt sugar and rust. Every exhale from the container fogged the inside of the van's windshield. My headlights were dead, my phone screen blank. The world outside the windows was solid black, but I could feel motion. Like the van was rolling slowly forward, though my foot wasn't on the pedal. The radio clicked alive again. "Deliver the last one," the voice whispered. "They're waiting." My hands shook as I reached for the tub. It was warm, too warm for candy. I touched the lid and flinched. It felt like skin stretched tight over muscle, not plastic. When I lifted it, air rushed out, wet and sour. Inside, nestled among the candy bars, were dozens of little masks, melted, deformed, sticky. Beneath them, something moved. I slammed the lid shut, heart hammering. "No," I said out loud. "I'm done." But the van didn't care. The engine growled. The steering wheel jerked, turning itself. I yanked the parking brake, snapped it clean off. The van kept moving, slow and deliberate. Through the fog, lights flickered, houses again, now on both sides of the road, stretching into forever. Every porch glowed with faint orange light, and tiny figures stood in front of each one, buckets ready. The van stopped on its own. The dash lit up. Final delivery location reached. I tried the door. Locked. Then the back doors creaked open by themselves. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of old candy and something sweetly rotten. Small footsteps shuffled closer. Dozens of them. I grabbed the flashlight, swung it around. The beam caught hundreds of little faces. Children, all in masks melted together like wax, poured over mannequins. Each one clutched a bucket full of red-stained wrappers, their heads tilted in unison. "Take it," a voice said from nowhere, or everywhere. "Last delivery." The breathing tub began to shake harder, rattling against the van floor. The lid bulged once, twice, then cracked open. A small hand pushed out, gray, sticky, holding a single candy bar wrapped in paper that shimmered wetly. On the wrapper, "Special order, delivered by my name." I screamed and threw the thing out into the crowd. The children surged forward. The van rocked side to side, small palms slapping metal. Through the windshield, I saw faces pressing against the glass, teeth glinting behind torn masks. Then everything went silent. The doors opened. Empty street. The tub gone. The fog rolled back, showing a perfectly normal suburban block. Streetlights on, lawns tidy, Halloween decorations swaying in the breeze. I stumbled out, gasping. The van's scanner beeped softly. The delivery list had changed. 3 of 3 deliveries completed, recipient, Cedar Crescent. Community status, driver replaced. Before I could process it, my reflection in the window smiled back. Only it wasn't smiling with me. Its mouth opened and candy spilled out. I ran until I couldn't breathe. I don't remember getting home, just waking up in my own bed before dawn. My uniform shirt was soaked in something sticky. In my pocket was a single candy wrapper with my barcode, and the note, "Thank you for joining the route." I quit that night. Disconnected every app, smashed my phone, sold the van. But last week, a new dispatch text came through on my backup number. No app installed, no account. Just one message. Emergency candy restock, Cedar Crescent, 10:37 p.m., triple pay. And in my driveway this morning, there was a plastic tub waiting, sealed, breathing. You probably won't believe this, but electricity can scream. I'm a lineman for Mid-County Power. Been climbing poles for 16 years. I've seen what storms can do, snapped cables, melted insulators, fires that crawl through wires like veins. But nothing prepared me for Halloween night 3 years ago when the grid went dark on the east side and didn't come back right. It started simple. A service call. Dispatch logged it as a downed line near Maple Ridge, one of those old neighborhoods that still has wooden poles and decades of patchwork fixes. My partner, Rob, was off that night with the flu, so it was just me and the bucket truck. Rain coming down in sheets, wind making the wires sing that high metallic whine. I almost ignored the job. Half the outages on Halloween are decorations tripping breakers or kids throwing toilet paper over lines. But the ticket was tagged priority, possible fatal. That means something's on fire or someone's already dead. I rolled out around 10:45. The radio kept cutting out. Every time I tried to call dispatch, I'd hear whispers under the static. Soft, rhythmic, almost like words. Probably bleed over from another channel, I told myself. Happens more often than you'd think. When I hit Maple Ridge, all the streetlights were out. Houses lined both sides like teeth rotting in a jaw. Dark, wet, half collapsed from years of neglect. The rain hissed against the windshield, and every so often the lightning flashed just enough to show the lines sagging low, heavy with water. I parked near pole number 47 and stepped out. My boots sank in mud up to the ankles. The wind smelled like ozone and something else, burnt plastic and iron, like when a transformer arcs too long. I grabbed my flashlight and swept it upward. The top line was down, but not snapped, more like peeled, insulation melted in ragged spirals. The wire hung halfway to the ground, sparking weakly. I followed it with the light. The far end disappeared behind a row of houses, the glow flickering deeper in the trees. That's when I heard the laughing. Not kids. Too low, too slow. Like something was trying to remember how laughter worked. "Hello?" I shouted, instantly regretting it. My voice sounded small in that kind of dark. No answer. Just a hum that vibrated my ribs. Then my flashlight flickered, died, came back half strength. The beam cut through the rain, landing on the wires. They were moving, not swaying from wind, coiling. The copper twisted, writhing across the asphalt like a nest of snakes. Each spark that jumped made a faint, breathy sound, almost human. I stepped back toward the truck, heart slamming. The hum deepened, rising until it hit a frequency I could feel in my teeth. My fillings buzzed. Then, just as suddenly, silence. Every house light on the street blinked on at once. The whole block came alive. Porch lights, televisions, every bulb burning white-hot. Power like I'd never seen. For 3 seconds, the rain froze mid-air, illuminated like glass beads. Then everything went dark again. The outage map on my tablet updated automatically. My location flashed red, blinking the word fault. I climbed back into the truck, turned the engine. It refused. The radio crackled one last time. A voice came through, calm, hollow, impossible. "Stay on the line, technician. We're not finished restoring service." Then the pole lights up the road began to blink, one by one in sequence, like something walking toward me, step by electrical step. The last light in the chain flared white, and for a split second I saw what was hanging from the wires. It wasn't a transformer. It was a man, and his body was still sparking. You'd think after 16 years around high voltage, nothing would rattle me. But seeing a human body twitching on a live wire resets what you think fear feels like. I sat frozen in the truck cab, headlights cutting through the rain until the white flare faded and left me staring into wet blackness again. I forced myself out. Rain slapped my face, cold enough to sting. I couldn't see the body anymore, but the pole was still humming. You can tell the difference between a current hum and something else. The rhythm was wrong, pulsing like breath instead of power. I grabbed the long fiberglass hot stick from the rack and my rubber gloves. The safety routine gave me something to hold on to. Check footing, test the ground, verify the neutral. But the soil around pole number 47 wasn't grounded at all. It vibrated under my boots, faint but alive, like standing on a buried transformer. "Dispatch, Tech 14-3 on Maple Ridge," I said into the radio. "I've got a fatal contact. Repeat, possible fatal. Send coroner and cut main feed to grid 3B. Static. Then, faintly, "Grid 3B is already offline." The line popped, bright and blue. I dropped flat. When the light cleared, something small landed beside me, a tooth, blackened at the root. I looked up. The shape on the wire was still there, hanging limp now, clothes burned to the skin. The head tilted down toward me as if it had heard my breath. "Stay on the line," the radio repeated, voice soft but wrong, echoing like it was coming from inside the pole instead of from dispatch. I backed toward the truck, slipping in the mud. My flashlight beam hit the ground and picked out footprints, bare, adult-sized, leading away from the base of the pole. They were filled with water, but no rain fell directly into them, like something invisible still stood there. I told myself it was shock. I'd call the sheriff, hand it off, drive away. But the tablet on my dash flickered alive again. The outage map had changed. My red dot wasn't alone anymore. A second marker blinked 3 poles over, then another, snaking down the street in a growing chain of faults. Each one lit the road for a second as the wires surged and popped. I followed with my eyes, counting 6, 7, 8 points of light. The final one stopped near a cul-de-sac and stayed on. A steady glow. Something was drawing the current through the lines. I should have called for backup, but I couldn't leave it. It was my circuit, my responsibility. So I drove. The headlights cut through fog that wasn't there before, thick as insulation smoke. The truck's voltage meter spiked, then dropped. My radio hissed again, same dead voice whispering between bursts. The line must be closed. The line must complete. When I reached the cul-de-sac, the glow was so bright I had to squint. A transformer box stood open, cables spilling out like intestines. At its center, a man in a soaked yellow safety jacket knelt with both hands clamped to the live copper. His face was burned black around the eyes. He wasn't being electrocuted. He was feeding the current, pulse by pulse. "Hey!" I shouted, running toward him. "Get off the line!" He lifted his head. The skin around his mouth cracked as he smiled. "Didn't you hear?" he said, voice slurring through the static. "We're restoring service." The current jumped from his body to the pole behind me. Every wire on the street arced at once, a chain reaction of blue fire racing back the way I'd come. When I turned, every single pole had a shape hanging from it, and each one had my face. When the power arcs, it makes light so bright, it blanks your thoughts. That was the first thing I noticed. Then the silence, thick and absolute, like the sound had burned out along with the current. Every pole down the block glowed faint blue, and the figures hanging from the wires swayed gently, their outlines flickering like reflections on water. I took a step back, slipped in mud, and nearly fell. When I steadied the flashlight, I saw the faces weren't just mine. They were everyone I'd worked with. Rob, Dave, even my trainer from 10 years ago. All of them. The air stank of ozone and cooked rubber. The poles crackled, popping tiny arcs that made the bodies twitch in unison, like puppets reacting to the same current. Their eyes opened all at once, small flashes of light deep in their sockets. My radio came alive again. Line 3 restored. Line 4 restored. The voice wasn't human. It was too measured, too slow. Syllables drawn out like an automated announcement, but spoken wetly. Final connection required. Not me, I whispered. I'm done. I ran to the truck, boots splashing through puddles that sizzled faintly under the rain. I yanked the door open and froze. My tablet, mounted on the dash, showed a single prompt. Reconnect circuit. Technician ID 14-3. Tap to confirm. The glow from the screen lit the cab in pale blue. I reached for it, meaning to turn it off. The moment my finger brushed the glass, static shot up my arm, sharp enough to make me drop to my knees. Sparks leapt between my fingertips and the steering wheel, dancing across the metal. The air filled with a sound like wind through high wires, but lower, more deliberate. Complete the line, whispered the voice again. The hanging bodies shifted, their wires stretched, tightening, until each one pointed toward me like compass needles. Blue light rippled down the cables, converging on the nearest pole. The hum grew deeper, pulsing through the ground. I grabbed the hot stick from the rack and ran toward the transformer. If I could isolate the feed, maybe it would stop whatever this was. Every step made my vision flicker. The world flashed between rain and firelight. I jammed the stick against the switch and pulled. The light cut out instantly. Total black. For half a second, I thought I'd done it. Then something grabbed the stick from the other end. I felt the pull through the fiberglass. A hand, strong and shaking. Lightning crawled down the length toward me, white-hot and silent. I dropped it and stumbled back. From the dark came the scrape of boots. The man in the yellow jacket stepped out of the font. His skin glowed faintly under the rain, thin arcs of light tracing his veins. He held my ID badge. "You closed it," he said. "You finished the circuit." I shook my head. I didn't touch, but then I saw the poles behind him lighting up again, one by one, all the way down the street. The bodies were gone. The wires looked clean, power restored, normal, except for the hum. It didn't stop. It followed the poles as they disappeared into the horizon, a single endless current running forward. My truck started itself. The tablet on the dash read, Technician 14-3, service continuing. Next assignment queued. It's been 3 years since that night. I still get the pings on Halloween. The calls come from disconnected substations. Sometimes the voices on the other end sound familiar. Sometimes they sound like mine. I've tried quitting, changing my number, even moving states. But every October, the lines start humming outside my window again, soft, steady, patient. And when the lights flicker, I swear the poles lean a little closer. You probably won't believe this, but I once heard my dead brother's voice coming out of a car trunk. It was Halloween night, and I was helping my sister run the community trunk or treat in her small Ohio town. You know the kind. Folding tables, SUVs with open hatches full of candy, local businesses trying to outdo each other with fog machines and LED bats. Her church partnered with the local AM station, 1070 WHLX, so every car tuned in to their spooky broadcast, while the kids trick-or-treated between vehicles. It was supposed to be wholesome. Loud music, cider, trunk lights blinking in rhythm to old monster hits. I hadn't been back in town since the funeral 5 years earlier, so it felt good to help. My sister Lydia was busy at the registration tent. I volunteered to monitor the line of cars coming in. 30 spots in the radio station lot. The first weird thing happened around 8:10 p.m. The radio signal glitched mid-song. Instead of thriller, a soft whisper came through. Static, then a voice. Slow, almost conversational. You're listening to WHLX. Keep your doors closed. People laughed, thinking it was a prank segment. The DJ came back seconds later, all cheerful. "Technical difficulties, folks," he said. "Don't touch that dial." I should have ignored it, but I work in sound engineering part-time. I know what feedback and interference sound like, and that wasn't either. It was directional, like a voice picked up by a mic inside a confined space. At 8:25, another glitch. I was walking past a minivan covered in fake cobwebs when every nearby car radio cut to dead air. Then, a faint hum, not music, but human humming, tuneless. It lasted exactly 8 seconds before the broadcast resumed. The kids didn't notice, but the parents did. You could see their faces tighten, eyes darting at their dashboards. I went to the booth to ask the station tech about it. The poor guy looked rattled, sweat darkening his shirt even though it was cold out. "It's looping," he muttered. "We're not broadcasting that. It's bleeding in from somewhere else." Then the trunk of the nearest car popped open by itself. Not wide, just enough to make a sound. The candy bowl inside rattled. A small voice came through the car speakers. Not the radio this time, but the AUX feed. Tinny, compressed, like a phone call recorded wrong. "Is that you, Tommy?" My heart stopped. That was my name. And that voice, it was Daniel's. My brother. I stepped back. "Who's messing with this?" I asked. The car's owner, a woman dressed as a witch, looked at me blankly. "What?" The voice continued. "It's dark in here." The speakers hissed. "It's so dark in here!" A child screamed. Everyone's radios switched on at once. The same whispering voice filled the air, distorted and overlapping in different pitches. Trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat. The power flickered across the lot. Fog machines sputtered. LED bats stuttered in half-light. The cars all revved their engines simultaneously, even the ones without keys. The ground buzzed faintly beneath my feet, like a frequency too low to hear but too strong to ignore. I pulled open the trunk, trying to find the source. Inside was a black speaker shaped like a jack-o'-lantern, wired to the radio feed. The face wasn't plastic. It was soft, like stretched leather. The mouth moved slightly as the voice whispered through the static. "You finally tuned in." The jack-o'-lantern speaker grinned wider, and the radio announcer's cheerful voice returned. using my brother's voice instead. I should have shut off the station feed right then, but the sound froze me. The pumpkin speaker's grin widened with each pulse of static. The mouth flexed, plastic or flesh, stretching as a second voice joined my brother's. A woman's, slow and sweet, whispering under him like harmony. "You finally tuned in. Stay a while." Every radio in the parking lot clicked back on at once. The same hum rolled through every trunk, same phrase echoing through different voices, lagging by half a second. People were laughing nervously, thinking it was part of the show, but their laughter came out thin. The youngest kids started crying, clutching candy buckets that shook with the bass. I backed away from the car, bumping into another. Its speakers were dead. No static, no song, just breathing, faint and wet. When I touched the volume knob, the car engine coughed to life, though no key was in it. The headlights flared straight into my face, blinding white. The DJ's voice burst through again, cheerful but wrong. "You're listening to WHLX Halloween Live. Call in and tell us who you missed tonight." Then my brother again, soft, almost kind. "I miss you, Tommy." My stomach dropped. Daniel died 5 years ago on this same road. Head-on collision coming home from the station he used to work at. 1070 WHLX. He'd been running an overnight set, testing a new transmitter. No one ever found the recording. I looked up at the booth across the lot. The tiny mobile studio trailer. The door was ajar, light flickering inside. The tech was gone. Just an empty chair and a mic swinging gently from its stand. The fog thickened, rolling low over the asphalt. The cars started idling one by one, headlights blinking in unison, turning the lot into a stuttering pulse of light. The hum beneath the broadcast deepened into a low, sub-bass vibration that rattled my ribs. Kids scattered toward the church side of the lot. Parents yelled, phones out, but every screen showed the same thing. WHX, live broadcast connected. Even with their phones on silent, the faint static leaked from speakers. I sprinted for the trailer, climbed the steps 2 at a time, and grabbed the mic. It was warm, too warm. The console lights blinked a pattern that looked like Morse code. I turned the volume all the way down. The static stayed. The on-air light above me glowed steady red. No one had flipped it. From the monitor speaker came whispering, a crowd overlapping. "Take a trunk, leave a voice. Take a trunk, leave a voice." Then a click, like a phone connecting, and I heard breathing right in my earphones. "Danny?" I said before I could stop myself. He chuckled softly. "It's good to hear you again, Tommy. We're almost full." "Full of what?" The mic popped. For a second, the waveform display flashed a shape instead of sound, something like a face stretched across the equalizer bars. "You brought new ones," he said. "Every car that tunes in leaves a little behind. You should have stayed gone." The trailer shook. Through the window, I saw parents pounding on car doors that wouldn't open. Speakers across the lot screamed feedback, then cut to silence. One by one, every trunk lid snapped shut with a slam that echoed off the buildings. The broadcast light turned from red to deep orange. The console read, "Recording saved, trunk or treat, live archive 002. I yanked the plug from the wall. The sound didn't stop. The power died across the entire lot, but every car radio still whispered in the dark, my brother's voice calling out the same phrase again and again. "Don't go yet, Tommy. We're still on air." If I hadn't been standing there, I wouldn't have believed it. Every car in that lot, dark and dead, still whispering like they were alive. No engines, no lights, no power, but the sound carried, tiny, ghostly voices bleeding through metal. My brother's voice rode above the rest, steady and close, like he was sitting right next to my ear. "Stay tuned, Tommy. We're almost done recording." The radio booth glowed faint orange from the dead console, the on-air light pulsing faintly in rhythm with the whispering. Outside, fog drifted low across the asphalt, hugging the tires of each car. The trunks were closed now, sealed tight, but something inside them shifted, thudding softly, like people knocking from the inside. I stumbled out of the trailer, shouting Lydia's name. My voice echoed weirdly, stretched by the fog, coming back to me in a dozen broken fragments. No answer. Just the whispering. Then the cars started opening again, slowly, one by one. Each trunk lifted in near-perfect synchronization, revealing piles of candy buckets, flashing toys, and something else shown. Coiled among the treats were black speaker cords, writhing faintly like veins, snaking from trunk to trunk. The air smelled like copper and burnt rubber. The nearest trunk blinked, a pair of red taillights flaring like eyes. Then Daniel's voice came through that car's speakers directly, clear and gentle. "Don't run, Tommy. You used to love Halloween." I froze. "You're not him," I said, but my voice cracked. "You're just some recording, some freak broadcast trick." He laughed. It wasn't cruel, it was familiar. The same laugh from the home videos we never could bring ourselves to watch. "You always said the world was just signals, remember? Everything we hear or see, just patterns. Some don't stop when we do." The cords twitched, pulling tighter, weaving between the trunks like an organism knitting itself together. The entire row of cars hummed, their radios lit up again. Same station, same dial. My name scrolled across every dashboard screen in glowing text. Tommy Harlan, guest host. I backed up. My shoe hit something soft. Lydia's candy bag, half full. The rest of it spilled across the ground. Reese's, Tootsie Rolls, a small voice recorder. I picked it up out of instinct. Its red light blinked. Click. "Tommy," Lydia's voice whispered on the playback, breathless. "Don't answer him. Don't." Static. Then Daniel's voice interrupted her. She shouldn't have tuned in early. I dropped the recorder. From the fog came movement. Lydia, or what looked like her, stepping between the cars. Her eyes were hollow, her mouth half open, whispering words that weren't hers. "You can stop it, Tommy," she said. "Cut the feed." I didn't think, though. I ran back into the trailer, grabbed the emergency breaker on the wall, and yanked it down. Sparks erupted. The sound died instantly. No whispering, no hum, just wind and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The lights across the lot flickered back to life. Parents screamed, rushing to their kids. Doors unlocked, engines restarted. The world snapped back to normal. Except for one thing. Every car radio now displayed a new preset. 1070 WHLX, the Harlan Hour. The broadcast feed was dead, the equipment fried. But somewhere in the static, faint under the buzz, I could still hear him laughing. It's been a year since then. The event was canceled, the lot torn down, but 1070 still airs a midnight Halloween broadcast every October 31st. No DJs listed, no staff, no ads. The voice they play sounds a lot like mine. I don't own a radio anymore. But sometimes, when I pass a parked car, I hear that same station faintly through its speakers, my brother's voice and mine together, repeating the same line. You're listening to WHLX, and we'll be right back. You probably won't believe this, but corn can whisper back if you listen long enough. I was working seasonal at Miller's farm that year. Minimum wage, long hours, October chill creeping through my jacket. They hire temps for the harvest maze, a family-friendly corn maze with hay rides, cider, and a few candy gates. The idea is, kids pass through checkpoints where we hand out small candy bars. I worked gate 3, the midpoint, the one furthest from the main road. The first 2 nights were fine. Cold, muddy, long. But by Halloween night, something felt off. The air was thicker, damp enough that sound seemed to hang there longer than it should. The maze looked different too. The paths curved subtly, like the stalks were growing back over old roots. The owners swore they pruned daily, but it didn't matter. The corn grows faster than it should out there. You hear it creak when no wind's blowing. I had a folding chair, a lantern, a box of candy, and a radio playing some oldies from a local station. The light threw long yellow bars across the corn. When kids came through, I'd stamp their hand and say, "Happy Halloween." Nothing spooky. Easy job. Around 8:45, the first weird thing happened. A kid showed up alone, maybe 8 years old. Pale face, slick black hair, red hoodie, no costume. I smiled and held out the candy. "Where's your group, bud?" He didn't answer, just stared at my hand, then at the lantern. His eyes looked wrong, not scary, just glassy, like he'd been crying for hours. "Do I have to take it?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "That's how the game works." He took the candy, looked at it, then held it back out. "What if it's not mine?" I tried to laugh it off. "Don't worry, man. It's free. Happy Halloween." He set the candy down on the dirt and walked away. No flashlight, no parents calling his name, just gone into the corn. I listened for footsteps. Nothing. The stalks didn't even rustle. About 10 minutes later, another group came by. 2 parents and 3 kids in costume. When I asked if they'd seen a boy in a red hoodie, they shook their heads. "We've been the only ones on this route," the dad said. I figured the kid found another exit. Still, I couldn't shake the image of him leaving the candy behind. By 9:30, the fog rolled in, low and pale, the kind that eats your light. I turned up the lantern. The maze quieted. No more laughter from the farmyard. No more tractor noise. Just the slow breathing of wind through dry corn. That's when I noticed something new. The candy box was half empty, but no one had come through for 20 minutes. Each time I looked away, another handful would disappear. I counted them out loud. 36 left. I blinked. 32. Then 28. "All right," I muttered, trying to keep my cool. "Whoever's doing that better stop." The corn rustled, but it wasn't wind. It was rhythmic, steady, like someone walking a circle around my post. I shined the flashlight. The rows looked endless, shifting in the fog. Then, from somewhere deep inside the maze, a voice. Soft, childish. "It's mine now." My lantern flickered. The candy box trembled, wrappers rustling as if a breeze had come from below. I knelt, peered underneath, and saw dirt pulsing like a throat, pushing the candy up and down. The voice came again, closer this time. Gate 3 has to feed the maze. I backed away, tripped on the lantern, and fell hard, just as a small red hoodie rose out of the corn, empty sleeves dragging across the ground toward me. I scrambled backward until the lantern tipped, spilling its light into the dirt. The hoodie kept moving, dragging forward like there was something crawling inside it. But the sleeves hung limp. The fog thickened until the corn around me looked like walls. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice sounding tiny in that choking quiet. "This isn't funny." The hoodie stopped about a foot from my boots. The hood turned toward me, though there was no head inside. The fabric twitched, then flattened. I held my breath. When I blinked, it was gone, just pressed into the soil like it had sunk through. My radio hissed. The song had cut mid-chorus. A low voice slid through the static, whispering like wind through dry stalks. "Gate 3 is hungry." I froze. The radio wasn't battery-powered. It was plugged into the farm's generator line. That meant someone had patched in. "Miller, is that you?" I asked. "This a prank?" The reply was a faint giggle, multiplied, like several kids laughing inside a pipe. Something rustled to my right. A shape emerged between the stalks, small, maybe child-sized, wearing a plastic pumpkin mask. I exhaled in relief. "You lost, kid? Maze closes soon." The figure nodded slowly. Its hands were empty. When I offered candy, it leaned close. The eye holes of the mask weren't black plastic. They were hollow, and the fog inside moved. It whispered through the holes, a voice layered over itself. "You took ours. Now we take yours." I dropped the candy box and ran. The maze twisted tighter than it should have. Paths I'd memorized folded into dead ends. Every corner, another figure in costume, standing still, masks glistening with dew. None spoke. They only breathed in unison, a soft sucking sound like wind through straw. My flashlight caught something painted on the stalks, symbols in sticky brown smears, looping letters forming words. "Gate 3 feeds." I followed the faint trail lights toward what should have been the exit. The fog pulsed brighter ahead, lanterns glowing through it. But when I reached them, I realized I'd circled back to my own station. The candy box was upright again, refilled. The hoodie lay folded neatly beside it. The radio clicked. "All gates accounted for," a child's voice said. "Except 3. I picked up the mic. "This is Gate 3. I'm accounted for. You little—" The words died. On the other end of the channel, I heard myself speaking. Same tone, same accent. "Gate 3 reporting. All candy collected." The lantern dimmed until the light was greenish, like pond water. The soil around the post swelled, soft and breathing. My boot sank an inch, then another. Something cold brushed my ankle from below. I yanked free and stumbled back. The corn parted ahead of me, an opening that hadn't been there before. At the end of the path, through fog, I saw the main barn lights glowing warm. Civilization. I sprinted for them, lungs tearing. The whispering followed, rising in pitch. Halfway there, a shape stepped onto the trail. The boy in the red hoodie. Only this time, I could see his face. It wasn't skin, just packed earth molded into human shape, crumbling with each breath. His eyes were wet pits filled with tiny black seeds. "Where's your candy?" he asked. I tried to shove past him. He grabbed my wrist and I felt roots slide beneath my skin like splinters. The ground surged upward, softening underfoot. The last thing I heard before darkness swallowed me was the radio repeating, "Gate 3 feeds the maze." When I came to, I was standing at my post again, the lantern glowing steady, and the stamp on my hand wasn't the farm logo anymore. It was a small corn stalk, curling upward like it was growing from my skin. When the lantern's light steadied, everything looked normal again, too normal. The fog was gone. The paths were clean, the candy box full, the radio playing its regular oldies. I stood there panting, mud soaking through my jeans, the stamp on my hand glowing faint green in the lantern light. "Gate 3, check in," I said into the radio, voice shaking. "All good here." The reply came quick. "Copy that, Gate 3. Keep those smiles up. Final group's on their way." The voice wasn't the manager's. It was bright and smooth, but empty. Like someone reading a line they didn't understand. I wanted to run, head straight through the stalks, job be damned. But the maze was quiet again, and I could already hear laughter somewhere far off. I told myself it was fine. Finish the shift. Go home. The group came through a few minutes later. Parents, 3 kids, flashlights flickering. They looked tired, sugar drunk. The youngest girl wore a scarecrow costume, straw poking out from her sleeves. She stopped right in front of my candy box. "Can I take 2?" she asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were fixed on something behind me. When I turned, I saw a second version of myself standing beside the lantern. Same coat, same face, same stupid reflective vest. The only difference was the expression. His smile stretched too wide, teeth glinting yellow in the lamplight. He held out a piece of candy to the little girl. She reached for it. "Hey!" I shouted. "Get away from her!" The double turned his head toward me, and his skin rippled like wind through silk. "Gate 3 feeds the maze," he said softly. "You gave it your name. Now it has yours." The candy in his hand melted into dark soil. The girl screamed. Her parents grabbed her and ran down the path, flashlight beams bouncing wildly. I lunged forward, but the other me was already stepping funk into the corn. The stalks swallowed him whole. The radio crackled again. "Gate 3 closing. All offerings received." The lantern dimmed, sputtered, died. In the dark, the corn whispered, soft, endless, like hundreds of voices breathing in rhythm. Beneath my boots, the dirt pulsed faintly, and the glow under my skin spread up my arm in thin, green threads. I ran, no idea which way, just through walls of corn until I hit the outer fence. The boards cracked under me as I climbed over, falling onto gravel. The farm lights were ahead, dim but real. I staggered toward them, screaming for help. When the manager found me, I was still holding the radio. He said I'd been missing for over an hour. Gate 3's lantern had gone out at 9:30, and nobody could raise me on comms. He thought I'd just walked off. I quit the next morning. Packed up, left town, didn't even wait for my last paycheck. That was 2 years ago, but the maze keeps showing up online. New drone footage every fall, same layout, same signs. Every image has one thing in common. If you zoom in on Gate 3, you can see someone standing there. Same vest, same stance, holding a candy box. And every Halloween night, I get a text from a number I don't recognize. No message, just a single picture. The gate, lit by lantern glow, my reflection smiling back. You probably won't believe this, but corn can whisper back if you listen long enough. I was working seasonal at Miller's farm that year. Minimum wage, long hours, October chill creeping through my jacket. They hire temps for the harvest maze, a family-friendly corn maze with hay rides, cider, and a few candy gates. The idea is, kids pass through checkpoints where we hand out small candy bars. I worked gate 3, the midpoint, the one furthest from the main road. The first 2 nights were fine. Cold, muddy, long. But by Halloween night, something felt off. The air was thicker, damp enough that sound seemed to hang there longer than it should. The maze looked different too. The paths curved subtly, like the stalks were growing back over old roots. The owners swore they pruned daily, but it didn't matter. The corn grows faster than it should out there. You hear it creak when no wind's blowing. I had a folding chair, a lantern, a box of candy, and a radio playing some oldies from a local station. The light threw long yellow bars across the corn. When kids came through, I'd stamp their hand and say, "Happy Halloween." Nothing spooky. Easy job. Around 8:45, the first weird thing happened. A kid showed up alone, maybe 8 years old. Pale face, slick black hair, red hoodie, no costume. I smiled and held out the candy. "Where's your group, bud?" He didn't answer, just stared at my hand, then at the lantern. His eyes looked wrong, not scary, just glassy, like he'd been crying for hours. "Do I have to take it?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "That's how the game works." He took the candy, looked at it, then held it back out. "What if it's not mine?" I tried to laugh it off. "Don't worry, man. It's free. Happy Halloween." He set the candy down on the dirt and walked away. No flashlight, no parents calling his name, just gone into the corn. I listened for footsteps. Nothing. The stalks didn't even rustle. About 10 minutes later, another group came by. 2 parents and 3 kids in costume. When I asked if they'd seen a boy in a red hoodie, they shook their heads. "We've been the only ones on this route," the dad said. I figured the kid found another exit. Still, I couldn't shake the image of him leaving the candy behind. By 9:30, the fog rolled in, low and pale, the kind that eats your light. I turned up the lantern. The maze quieted. No more laughter from the farmyard. No more tractor noise. Just the slow breathing of wind through dry corn. That's when I noticed something new. The candy box was half empty, but no one had come through for 20 minutes. Each time I looked away, another handful would disappear. I counted them out loud. 36 left. I blinked. 32. Then 28. "All right," I muttered, trying to keep my cool. "Whoever's doing that better stop." The corn rustled, but it wasn't wind. It was rhythmic, steady, like someone walking a circle around my post. I shined the flashlight. The rows looked endless, shifting in the fog. Then, from somewhere deep inside the maze, a voice. Soft, childish. "It's mine now." My lantern flickered. The candy box trembled, wrappers rustling as if a breeze had come from below. I knelt, peered underneath, and saw dirt pulsing like a throat, pushing the candy up and down. The voice came again, closer this time. "Gate 3 has to feed the maze." I backed away, tripped on the lantern, and fell hard, just as a small red hoodie rose out of the corn, empty sleeves dragging across the ground toward me. I scrambled backward until the lantern tipped, spilling its light into the dirt. The hoodie kept moving, dragging forward like there was something crawling inside it. But the sleeves hung limp. The fog thickened until the corn around me looked like walls. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice sounding tiny in that choking quiet. "This isn't funny!" The hoodie stopped about a foot from my boots. The hood turned toward me, though there was no head inside. The fabric twitched, then flattened. I held my breath. When I blinked, it was gone, just pressed into the soil like it had sunk through. My radio hissed. The song had cut mid-chorus. A low voice slid through the static, whispering like wind through dry stalks. "Gate 3 is hungry." I froze. The radio wasn't battery-powered. It was plugged into the farm's generator line. That meant someone had patched in. "Miller, is that you?" I asked. "This a prank?" The reply was a faint giggle, multiplied, like several kids laughing inside a pipe. Something rustled to my right. A shape emerged between the stalks, small, maybe child-sized, wearing a plastic pumpkin mask. I exhaled in relief. "You lost, kid? Maze closes soon." The figure nodded slowly. Its hands were empty. When I offered candy, it leaned close. The eye holes of the mask weren't black plastic. They were hollow, and the fog inside moved. It whispered through the holes, a voice layered over itself. "You took ours, now we take yours." I dropped the candy box and ran. The maze twisted tighter than it should have. Paths I'd memorized folded into dead ends. Every corner, another figure in costume, standing still, masks glistening with dew. None spoke. They only breathed in unison, a soft sucking sound like wind through straw. My flashlight caught something painted on the stalks, symbols in sticky brown smears, looping letters forming words. "Gate 3 feeds." I followed the faint trail lights toward what should have been the exit. The fog pulsed brighter ahead, lanterns glowing through it. But when I reached them, I realized I'd circled back to my own station. The candy box was upright again, refilled. The hoodie lay folded neatly beside it. The radio clicked. "All gates accounted for," a child's voice said. "Except 3. I picked up the mic. "This is Gate 3. I'm accounted for. You little—" The words died. On the other end of the channel, I heard myself speaking. Same tone, same accent. "Gate 3 reporting. All candy collected." The lantern dimmed until the light was greenish, like pond water. The soil around the post swelled, soft and breathing. My boot sank an inch, then another. Something cold brushed my ankle from below. I yanked free and stumbled back. The corn parted ahead of me, an opening that hadn't been there before. At the end of the path, through fog, I saw the main barn lights glowing warm. Civilization. I sprinted for them, lungs tearing. The whispering followed, rising in pitch. Halfway there, a shape stepped onto the trail. The boy in the red hoodie. Only this time, I could see his face. It wasn't skin, just packed earth molded into human shape, crumbling with each breath. His eyes were wet pits filled with tiny black seeds. "Where's your candy?" he asked. I tried to shove past him. He grabbed my wrist and I felt roots slide beneath my skin like splinters. The ground surged upward, softening underfoot. The last thing I heard before darkness swallowed me was the radio repeating, "Gate 3 feeds the maze." When I came to, I was standing at my post again, the lantern glowing steady, and the stamp on my hand wasn't the farm logo anymore. It was a small corn stalk, curling upward like it was growing from my skin. When the lantern's light steadied, everything looked normal again. Too normal. The fog was gone. The paths were clean. The candy box full. The radio playing its regular oldies. I stood there panting, mud soaking through my jeans, the stamp on my hand glowing faint green in the lantern light. "Gate 3, check in," I said into the radio, voice shaking. "All good here." The reply came quick. "Copy that, Gate 3. Keep those smiles up. Final group's on their way." The voice wasn't the manager's. It was bright and smooth, but empty. Like someone reading a line they didn't understand. I wanted to run, head straight through the stalks, job be damned. But the maze was quiet again, and I could already hear laughter somewhere far off. I told myself it was fine. Finish the shift. Go home. The group came through a few minutes later. Parents, 3 kids, flashlights flickering. They looked tired, sugar drunk. The youngest girl wore a scarecrow costume, straw poking out from her sleeves. She stopped right in front of my candy box. "Can I take 2?" she asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were fixed on something behind me. When I turned, I saw a second version of myself standing beside the lantern. Same coat, same face, same stupid reflective vest. The only difference was the expression. His smile stretched too wide, teeth glinting yellow in the lamplight. He held out a piece of candy to the little girl. She reached for it. "Hey!" I shouted. "Get away from her!" The double turned his head toward me, and his skin rippled like wind through silk. "Gate 3 feeds the maze," he said softly. "You gave it your name. Now it has yours." The candy in his hand melted into dark soil. The girl screamed. Her parents grabbed her and ran down the path, flashlight beams bouncing wildly. I lunged forward, but the other me was already stepping funk into the corn. The stalks swallowed him whole. The radio crackled again. "Gate 3 closing. All offerings received." The lantern dimmed, sputtered, died. In the dark, the corn whispered, soft, endless, like hundreds of voices breathing in rhythm. Beneath my boots, the dirt pulsed faintly, and the glow under my skin spread up my arm in thin, green threads. I ran, no idea which way, just through walls of corn until I hit the outer fence. The boards cracked under me as I climbed over, falling onto gravel. The farm lights were ahead, dim but real. I staggered toward them, screaming for help. When the manager found me, I was still holding the radio. He said I'd been missing for over an hour. Gate 3's lantern had gone out at 9:30, and nobody could raise me on comms. He thought I'd just walked off. I quit the next morning. Packed up, left town, didn't even wait for my last paycheck. That was 2 years ago. But the maze keeps showing up online. New drone footage every fall, same layout, same signs. Every image has one thing in common. If you zoom in on Gate 3, you can see someone standing there. Same vest, same stance, holding a candy box. And every Halloween night, I get a text from a number I don't recognize. No message, just a single picture. The gate, lit by lantern glow, my reflection smiling back.